Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Dispatch with me, the Raspy Dispatcher. I am super excited to bring on my friend Kenzie today to talk about dispatch. We met through one of my teammates, so we have a personal relationship outside of the world of dispatch. So, if anything, it's definitely going to be interesting. So, I'll go ahead and bring her on. Here's Kenzie. Hello, Kenzie.
Hey,
How you doing out there in Iowa?
good. There's no snow, Ash, so we're okay
You
right now.
the very first year I was in Iowa, no one mentioned the weather. And I remember my coach DJ, he was like, this is the worst winter we've had in years. And I'm like, I feel like it was probably the same last year, my guy. It was probably the same last year.
Probably made you come for your visit in like the spring, so that way you
Mm,
couldn't
you
like get
know,
the real Iowa effect.
he did. They just, they were like, yeah, it snows. And I was like, oh, how cool. Like the Christmas movies, like I always wanted a white Christmas. Nah, I'm good.
Yeah, nope. Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
Oh my gosh. So we were just talking before we jumped on here about how we even like figured out we were dispatchers. Like we were in the same room and had no idea that we both did the same job. And I showed up. I flew into Iowa with all my California teammates to meet up with you and Shayna and our other friends. And I want to say it was for Shayna's wedding. And
I
somehow
think
we
so.
were at the table, and it was like, oh, I'm a 911 dispatcher, and I was like, me too. So
Yep, pretty much.
it's a small world, so funny. Um, where did you dispatch? What kind of how'd you get into it? All that good
Yeah.
stuff.
Yes, so like Ashley said, I'm from Iowa, so small town Iowa, and so I'm from Esterville, Iowa. And I actually it's kind of I don't know how to say I got into it, but like I graduated school. I actually have a bachelor's degree and a double major in like human services, criminology, sociology. Was gonna go and, help people be like a DHS worker, something like that. So I got a job. Um Another town near Esterville and lived just outside with a friend for a while and started it, but I hated it. Traveled like 300 miles a day, just
Mm.
had my own like schedule. So it was nice, but I was like, eh. And then I don't know. So I literally quit and gave myself 30 days to find another job. And I'm like, oh, where am I going to go from here? And honestly, I don't remember, but I know like when I was looking, I walked into the sheriff's office, into their little lobby there, and they were applying for part time at the time. And so I ended up getting an application. And I think I want to say it's because my cousin, who actually lives in Colorado, is a dispatcher.
Mm.
And I want to say maybe I like thought of her like, oh, maybe I could do that. Anyways, fast forward, I ended up getting hired at the sheriff's office there in our town in Esterville. Didn't live in Esterville at the time. um Started in 2016, and then started part-time, like I said, and then literally became full-time within like 6 months, I think. And so just kind of fast forwarded through there and stayed there for until I didn't stay there, I guess.
That's so cool. And so I would say this, I don't know, have you watched that new 911 show? It's kind of like a live PD. I'm blanking on the name right now. But they follow dispatchers in their centers and like show the real life of a dispatcher. Have you had a chance
No.
to see that? I can't think of the
Uh-uh.
name right now, but one of the things that they showed kind of like a rural dispatch center, and like they're getting calls about bears and like having to talk people through like running away from bears. And in California, like where I am in the city, we don't deal with that type of
Yeah.
response in dispatch. And so I imagine, and I always wondered, because my brother lives in Colorado, I went to school in Iowa, dispatching like in in weather, like actual weather, because we don't really have bad weather in Cali. Like it's sunny and it's rainy. We complain when it's sunny. We complain when it rains. So having to actually dispatch us through a snowstorm, chase someone through a blizzard, like is that a real thing out there? Like, do you guys
Oh,
have that
100%.
often?
Yep. So when I first started, I actually worked overnights. So I worked overnights for like 2 to 3 years, and then I finally got moved to days. And it's 100% a real thing, and it's also 100% a real thing dispatching animal calls. We've actually, oh my gosh. So I'll get to the weather thing in a second here, but I do
Okay.
have to type in on the animal calls. So yes,
Okay.
we get cow calls, like loose cow
Mm.
calls. We
Mhm.
get horse calls. We get dog calls. I mean, anything. But I will say some of the best calls for animals. There was one time I had a dispatch for a horse that was running down the road, like in a
Mm.
ditch down the road or whatever. And literally, my deputy goes, well, I don't have a rope or anything. How am I supposed to get it? So he's literally driving his squad like in the field trying to get this horse to like go back in. And I'm like,
My
if I could
God.
only see what he was doing right now. Oh yeah. So there's some good animal calls, like there's good cow calls. Like I've had deputies like call out like, I got a orange heifer steer here, and I'm like, I don't know what that means. They just told me it was a cow. They're like, "It's got a tag on it," and I'm like,
I would have been
I'm
like,
not
"What did that officer just call that person? Call
I know, I'm like,
her."
"I'm not a farmer, I just tell you what to
Yeah.
go and do, and you just gotta go and fix it." But yeah, so there has been animal calls that have been in my memory bank, and
Mhm.
weather, yeah, weather's a real thing here, like you said, snowstorms, there's
Mhm.
been some times where it's pretty dicey at times, and it's kind of crazy because if you think about it, so just to give kind of a recap, so I'm in northern Iowa. I literally am right on the border of Minnesota.
Mhm.
And so Estherville is the main city, or I wouldn't even call it a city, but it's called a city in our county. Okay, so just for point of reference, our Emmett County is the county I'm in, and it's about 400 square miles. So it's only 400 miles long from one end to the other. Okay, Estherville is a population of about 5,000 to 6,000 people, and that's the biggest city in our county. I think
And
I
for reference, my high school had 4,000 kids in it. So
Yeah. Yeah, I just wanna let everyone know when I'm
just so you
talking,
know.
it's because I'm from a very, very small county
Mhm.
compared to what Ashley's town is. So, and I think I actually Googled this. I
Okay.
think the whole county together is about under 10,000 people. So,
Wow.
like, and we have, I think I counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 other towns. I wouldn't call them cities. Estherville is considered a city, but the other ones are kind of more like towns where they have maybe 100 people in them or less.
Mhm.
And so,
Mhm.
and so that's kind of just a good point of reference for like when I'm talking about stories, when I'm talking about a deputy driving down a field, probably because it's the only field we have for a couple miles. um,
Facts, yeah.
but yeah, and so back to the weather part of it. So with that being said, I in our center, we dispatch for police and we dispatch for fire, medical. We do the radios, we do the phones, so and we do all of that. And we're also a one-person center, so it's only one of us, which
Yeah.
also is a huge difference from bigger areas and stuff that
Mhm.
Ash would talk about. And so it's kind of different. Like I have a couple other friends that I've dispatched in bigger areas, and just talking with Ash about different things here and there, and so just keep that in mind when I'm talking because it's just one person. So I just
Mhm.
kind of wanted to get that out there because I
Yeah.
am from such a small area. And so some of the times when I talk, and I say I'm doing this and this and this, and you're thinking, well, what's your partner doing? Well, it's just me and the jailer who's in my other room. He's just looking at me like, well, she's asking me for help. I'm like, cool. um,
Oh,
and so
man.
yeah, and so I'm kind of getting off of the weather topic, but the
That's
weather
okay. We can
part
tangent
is
all
it.
day.
I know. And so the weather aspect of it. So we do get storms. So you get all sorts of weather. You get your snow, you get rain, you get fog, anything, you know. So
Mhm.
the most important and the most hardest, I think, is going to be your winters and probably like your like tornadoes because we get tornadoes and thunderstorms and different stuff like that.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
Snow, though, however, it's a whole nother world in like the
Mhm.
law enforcement side of it, and it's things people
Mhm.
don't think about, like how's an ambulance going to get to your house when there's 3 feet of snow, you know, and in the middle
Yeah.
of the night at 2 a.m., you know,
Yeah.
or when it's downpouring rain and someone fell outside and needs a lift assist and the officer has to stand there until you can get an ambulance there. And, just different things like that that
Yeah.
I've had happen, and or if you're talking to that person that's laying outside and they're pouring rain, you're just like trying to console them or tell them like someone's coming and they're in pain and crying and just different things like that that you have to deal
Yeah.
with. Um, but the snow, I remember one time I literally had to call, our county roads people. This was a
Mm.
nighttime call because the ambulance, well, first my deputy, he couldn't get through the road, I mean, and it was some call out in the county and it was in the middle of a snowstorm and it was an ambulance call, and
Mhm.
they needed to get through. So we literally, my deputy's like, there's no way I can barely make it through. I know the ambulance can't make it through. He's like,
Yeah.
you're gonna need to call county roads or something. Like, I don't know how to get to them. And I'm like, what do you mean? You're supposed to just go to the call.
Yeah.
And us being inside the council, like I can't see obvious. I mean, we
Yeah.
have windows, but and I'm
Yeah.
not oblivious to what was going on. But I was just like, oh crap. I'm like,
Mhm.
what do you mean you can't get to them? Like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
But that's just small town areas. And so we literally had to call the DOT state plows, wake them up at like 2 in the morning, which I'm sure they were thrilled about. Be like,
Yeah.
someone needs to get a truck and go to this road and pave it as soon as you can because my ambulance can't get there and my deputy can't get there and I have a medical call. And
Yeah.
and so just kind of doing stuff like that and just kind of juggling all of that, but
It's so funny, so I went from my bigger agency to a smaller agency. So we're on a good day a 3-person operation. Like that'd be preferred during the busy hours to have 3 people. Most of the time we're at 2, staffing, shout out, we're hiring. Um and but just how much of a appreciation that I've had since lateraling for these smaller agencies, and even like for agencies like where you are in Iowa, where we just don't have these experiences, and like dispatch in general, there's so much gray area that we got to work in and like figure out and like find a way to get things done. And I think that's just like this prime example of like, okay, the road's blocked, what do we do?
that
Or
wasn't in my training.
yeah, like who do I call? No one told me who to call when the snow's 3 feet high. Like, okay, let me Google, let me figure it out. And you just kind of work it and figure it out. That is a lot of dispatching, big and small towns, but
Yeah,
especially I would think for you guys out there for sure.
yeah. Yeah. And to bring up the staffing part, there's been times when I was working, it's kind of like it was a couple of early in the years, I we had one of our dispatchers, one of our full-timers didn't live in town. She lived out in the county, and there was one time I think I had to stay. We did normally 12 shifts or 8-hour shifts, but it was either 6A to 6P, 6P to 6A, or we would
Mhm.
do 6 to 2, 2 to 10, 10 to 6. Those were our shifts. So when I was going in at 6P, if I'd get off at 6A, well, if there was a storm in the middle of the night, there was times where the one dispatcher that lived in the county, she couldn't get out, so like I would have to stay there until like whenever someone else could come in,
The snow
because
melted.
obviously, right? I'm like, well, you should be here with me then so I can leave because I live in town. But it's really what
Yeah.
happened. Like, there'd be times where I remember I would be staying till about 10 a.m. until she could get scooped out or a deputy could get to her to bring her in, just different things like that. And
Mhm.
that's things people don't think about either. It's like someone has to be in this chair. Like I can't just
Yeah.
leave. you know,
Yeah.
and I think that's a lot of things that people don't realize is you can't just, I mean, someone has to be sitting in your chair. Like, and that's the thing with dispatch in general. It's a 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 job. Like, someone always is in that chair,
Mhm.
because if they're not, I mean, you can't do it.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing. And that's the thing, like, especially with one man departments or, even two people departments, sometimes you might be the lone person for a couple hours and it might be all holy hell, you never know. Um,
You really
but yeah, so
don't.
that's another thing, like with the weather that people don't think of, and
Mhm.
on that flip side of that, so like for like the thunderstorm and tornado aspect, there's been tons of times, going back to being solo and the only person in there. So when you have like your tornado watches and warnings and all that stuff, not only do you have that going on, you also have the flood of calls because people are panicking and wondering what's going on. Again,
Yeah.
small town syndrome. Um,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
keep in mind, okay, so you have our protocols for paging out watches and warnings, okay, which takes forever,
Yeah.
because you have to page each department, and then if it's a warning, you have to do the indoor warning system. And on top of all of that, you still have to answer all the other stuff going on. So, it's such a huge multitasking and just learning how to do all sorts of things, and so I think that's definitely something that it's hard to teach. You can train and you can do that, but I mean, the more you stick with it, obviously, the easier it gets. But it's a lot. It's a lot
Yeah.
when you're paging something, and all of a sudden in your ear you hear an officer call, and it's just like, well, crap. Do I cancel the page? Do I answer him? Like, how do you have to figure out which one you want to finish. If I'm going to
Yeah.
talk to him or if I'm going to finish my page and answer the phone or whatever. And then of course 911 probably is going off too
It's
because
definitely
might
going
as
off.
well.
It's definitely going off. But I think that's something definitely like a lot of people were like, oh, I'm this far into training. I'm trying to get better at this and that. And a lot of this job is doing it. Is like fumbling through it, getting better at it, repetitive, continuing. That's why our training is so long. I
Yeah.
mean, my training for my first agency pretty much lasted my whole probation. I went phones, and then I was solo phones, and then I went radio, and then I went radio training, and then I was solo both. And that took 18 months. And it takes that
Gosh.
long for a reason. It's a tough
Mhm.
job and you need to get your reps in. So
Yeah.
if you're out there, if you're in the mix of the training and you're feeling like a weight is on your shoulders, just hang in there. It
Yeah.
gets easier, it gets better, I promise. But it is a challenge to learn to
Mhm.
multitask. Especially in the smaller agencies. Like I had to learn in this lateral a different way of multitasking. Like I thought like it was all the same and it's just like no, now I got to throw people on hold quicker. I got to do all these different things differently than I did at my last agency.
Oh yeah. And training's different obviously for every department, I
Yeah.
mean, and it's always going to feel like you're not ready. And
Yeah.
to be honest, you probably aren't, when you go it because to be honest, they probably need you to fill that chair. So, I mean, especially in some of those smaller areas,
Mm.
I mean, you don't get no 18 months in smaller towns. I can guarantee that.
Yeah.
um, but, at the same time, and that's the thing, it's going to be different anywhere you go.
Yeah.
But you want to make sure first and foremost you know what you're doing, and I shouldn't say they'll just throw you in there because I would hope that they make sure you are comfortable and the safety and everything like that. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's different everywhere,
Yeah.
and so I mean, and you could be trained like we were talking about for the snowplow thing. Like I would have
Yeah.
I would have never gone over that in training. Like
Yeah. No.
I don't think that would have been something that would have come up. I mean,
Mhm.
hey, did you know that, at 2 a.m. you're going to have to learn how to, call the snowplow and have them pave a road out so that way we
Yeah.
can get to a medical call. Like, I would
Yeah.
have never have known that, and that's one of the things you just kind of, it just comes from knowing your resources, I guess, which is also another huge thing, I mean, and you learn those, as you go, you'll learn, little cheaters or little things like that. Like we had a whole book of like, if this happens, do this, or if this
Yeah.
happens, call this person for just different things, and every department has that, and so that was kind of interesting. But
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm.
So those are some weather examples, I guess.
Well, I remember my first experience with tornado weather. Scary, scary as all hell. I remember I was at Come and Go, the local market in Forest City, Iowa, and I got out my car and it was just silent. Like everything was just quiet and I was like, what is going, like it's so weird, but it was a nice day,
Yep.
blue sky, and I was like, it's creepy out here. I'm just gonna come in here, get my stuff, go. I need to go home, right? So I go in, probably grab the spicy chicken sandwich because that was my jam from Come and Go. And then
Yeah.
I walked out, still super silent, and the sky was like rolling in black. And I was like, I felt like I was in a Harry Potter movie. I was like, what?
What's
What is
happening?
going on? So I like race home, then it starts raining. And my roommate, she was from Iowa, and she was like, "Oh, it's a tornado. It's a tornado. Like, do we need to go downstairs?"
No, come on outside. We'll watch
Yeah,
it.
no. She was like, "No, I'll let you know." And I was like, "No, like," and I think, and I couldn't, and I didn't know the difference between watch, warning. I'm like, what does this mean? And like every 5 minutes, I was like, hey, do we have to go down? She was like, Ashley, I will tell you if it gets there. We probably won't have to. But I was freaking out. I was scared. I didn't like
Yeah.
it.
Oh
Do
my
not
gosh.
recommend.
That's hilarious. Oh my gosh. Oh,
Hot mess, hot mess.
I know.
So what would you say it was like in the beginning? Because you said you just kind of walked in, grabbed this application, was like, all right, guess I'm doing this. Was it like weird in the beginning? Were you like, this is my calling? Like what was the vibe
Oh,
in the beginning?
yeah, I was terrified. I mean, I never really had like any experience with law enforcement, never like been pulled over. I mean, well, I've been pulled over by cops because I like speed. So I shouldn't say that. But you know what I mean? Like, and I never have had to, never really called the cops before, never really needed them. It's different things like that. It just wasn't something, I did. And so it was a huge adjustment because, like, I mean, you're coming into this, dispatch center and like these cops are walking by and they have like guns on their belts and they wear
Yeah.
these uniforms and it's just it's very intimidating and you're sitting there and you're watching your trainer, you know, key up the mic and talking to this mic and typing away on the computer like a mad woman and I'm like, holy smokes, like, what is she doing? And then answers the phone or, tells them to be quiet because she's going to talk or, just different stuff like that. And, and first and foremost, just the look, like 6 screens in front of you. It's just like, man, where's the TV? Like, where's one screen? Like, I just, and it was very, very intimidating. And it took me a long time to like get used to it. Cause like, you almost like feel like sometimes like you're in trouble. Like, I mean, and I shouldn't say that you always associate like bad things like with the police, but like at first it was like, oh, I don't want to get in trouble. Like, you always feel like maybe it's because when I get pulled over, I'm like, oh, I hope I don't want to get in trouble. So part of me is like, you're coming into this new area, you're coming into a locked facility. Also for point of reference too, our dispatch center is in our courthouse. Okay. It's in the backside of the courthouse, lower level, which is also connected to the jail. So the dispatch center was literally shared hallways with the jail. There was a window and you could see the inmates and the stuff on the inside. So that's another point of reference. We're a very small jail as well too. I think we can hold like 12 inmates. I think. So very small. And and so obviously, like I said earlier, in the dispatch center, there was the jailer's desk as well too. So it was me and always a jailer. Most of the time, they're doing their checks and stuff like that. So you walk into this room and it's a locked door, they have to buzz you in and different things like that. Older building, older jail. And so, you'd have to just knock or, have someone push a button and they'll let you in, the door will latch or whatever. You wear a uniform. We had uniforms. And so they were very, very outdated when I started. Luckily, myself got them changed down the road. But you know, I mean, it was very intimidating for me, and I was terrified to talk on the radio. Like I probably mumbled and jumbled words and made up words that I had no idea what I was even saying half the time. And you know, and then like God, the first time you listen to yourself on the radio is a whole nother
Yeah.
thing. It's just like, why do I sound like that? Like, I don't want to sound like that, you know, or different things like that you don't think of. And answering your first 911 call, oh my gosh,
Do
like
you remember your first 911 call? Do you remember what it was?
I don't remember what it was. I honestly don't. I don't remember.
Yeah.
I wish I did, but I don't. But I just remember, you know, being so intimidated. But it's because, you know, I didn't have any association with law enforcement. You know, I didn't have any in my family. I didn't have any friends that were in law enforcement. You know, so when I first started, it was rough. You know, I mean, but you know, I trained. You know, like I said, I quit my other job, so I had plenty of time to train part time. So good for me. But you know, and we did training. We did 40 hours a week. I started a training on days. I actually don't think I trained any night shifts, which is fine,
Makes
you
sense.
know.
Makes sense in small towns.
Yeah,
Probably,
yeah, and
probably
it does, you
hard to
know, which
train
is
on
it's
a
and
night shift.
honestly, you know, I kind of say it's nice training during daytime because obviously more stuff happens, you know, and so it was very intimidating at first, I would say, but as time goes on, there's lots of perks with it being a smaller community, in a smaller dispatch center. I definitely, you know, gained family and friends fast. You know, you got to know people quicker. You got to know your deputies. You got to know your officers. You even got to know your fire personnel and your ambulance personnel. You know, you just got
Mhm.
to know all of them because you talk to all of them, you know, and it's such a
Yeah.
small area. And that was one thing I really did like too. And I moved to Esterville. So I was part time and I moved to town. So our department required us to live in the county. So I had to move when I got the job. And so I moved into Esterville. And so that was another thing. I was living in a town. I'm not from there, so I didn't know anyone. Um, and down the road, that was something I said I don't think I could ever do. I don't think I could dispatch in an area where I know people. What do you think you could? Like if you dispatched where you knew friends and family, could you do it?
You know, I definitely think there would be some challenges. Like if I answered, which is a reality, right? So if you
Yeah.
live where you work, which a lot of people like to live where they work, commute time, especially out here, you know, traffic is
Yeah.
wild. Um, so it's definitely reality for people that they might answer the phone and it's their family, their
Yeah.
loved one, their kid, their, you know,
Yeah.
would I choose that? No. I would not choose to answer the phone and Mackenzie's on the other line telling me some crazy stuff is going on.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
know.
but would I hope that I'd have the ability to do what I had to do to help my people and then get through it and then be like, all right, someone take my seat. I gotta go.
Yeah.
Yes, I do
Yeah.
hope that. But
And
yeah,
you
it's
would.
not,
You
it's
would.
not,
It's
yeah.
yeah.
It's robotics, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I would not want to pick up the phone and know that, you know, my neighbors are always beating each other up. You know,
Yeah. I know.
I wouldn't want that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And that the only reason I bring that up is because, you know, um at the sheriff's office, our surrounding counties, so I'm originally from another town, which is only like an hour away. They
Mhm.
had an opening at one point in time and their chief of police had reached out to me and said, you know, hey, would you ever consider, you know, coming to work over here? You know, we're hiring, blah, blah, blah. And
Mhm.
and there was a part of me that did consider it. You know, I was like, you know, it'd be nice to move back home. You know, I was just like, you know, it'd be nice to be closer to family, which I say closer and I'm literally only like 45 minutes away. I'm just a little crazy. I like being close to my family. That's
Hey,
small
hey,
town vibe.
there might be snows, which makes it, you know,
That
a
is
3-day trip.
true.
So
Yeah. And so, you know, but I think to me it would be very hard. You know, we um have surrounding dispatchers that I'm really close with. You know, obviously when you work nights or you work different shifts, you lean on your other dispatchers in different counties because sometimes they're the only people you can talk to at 2 o'clock in the morning. You know, so
true.
the counties south of us, I actually um know quite a bit of their dispatchers, and so you just hear different stories, and it's just one of those things. I always told myself, you know, from day one, I says, I don't think I would want to do this in a bigger city. That's for sure.
Mhm.
And I don't know if I could handle doing it in like my hometown where I know people. And I think that second part came as I kept doing this for a couple of years. Um,
Mhm.
if you would have asked me right away, and maybe if I would have started in my hometown, it would be different. But once you have been doing it for a while and you get all sorts of calls, I don't think I would feel comfortable hearing things, knowing things, because that's part of the job too, is a lot about people.
Yeah.
And you go out in public and you see those people and they don't know that but what happened to them. And I've always said that from day one. I says, that's one of the harder things about small town dispatching too, is I can go to the grocery store and I can see that female that just called me bawling last night because her kid was hurt, or I can see that guy who did this to this person, different things like that. And I can walk by him in the grocery store and they can look at me like they have no clue who I am, but I know exactly who they are. And it's just one of those things. It's one of those emotion things where you have to just turn it off,
Yeah.
and it's one of those things. It's like the confidential part of it, so much about people, and it's so crucial and it's so personal too. And I think that's another thing that doesn't get talked about either, is the emotional
Yeah.
side of it and the personal side of some of it, especially in small departments.
Mhm. And I mean, we definitely have an obligation to keep that confidence,
Hmm.
um, especially in small towns and in general dispatching. We are privy to a
Yeah.
lot of information in our cities, in our plates. I mean, if for me, when I think about things like that, I think about the businesses that call me. Because that's probably my best point of reference to relate to what you're speaking of, is because I can go into that business, CVS, Safeway, grocery store, where I work, which is probably going to be the place that I go where I work, because I don't work in the city. I don't live in the city that I work in. So I'm going to stop at businesses. And these businesses call my department for services. So they don't know that I'm the dispatcher, but like
Hmm.
I talked to you on the phone yesterday because someone was stealing, whatever,
Yeah.
or there was a fight
Yep.
over there, and it's like
Yeah.
I talk to all these people and they don't know me, but I know them. So I
Yeah.
definitely
Oh,
definitely
100%.
relate. 1,000%.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And and that's just what makes the job, I mean, and
Yeah.
that's part of like kind of the cool part of it. And I wouldn't say cool, but it's kind of, it's like a privilege. You're
Yeah.
privileged to this information, so you obviously have to uphold it and keep it safe, I mean,
Mhm.
I don't think that, and I would want the same respect, I guess, for myself too. I guess that's the way to say it. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, if I was having issues, I wouldn't want the person I just confided in. Otherwise, no one would ever call. And that's another thing you
Yeah.
gotta think of too. Like, if you sit here and you're going around and spilling the beans to everybody,
Mhm.
oh, Susie had this happen to her, and you're talking about that at the coffee shop or wherever you're at. Think of
Mhm.
that person. Like, think of how mortified I would be if like someone was talking about my personal business, and probably, and 9 times out of 10, if someone's calling, it's obviously probably one of the worst moments of their life, or
Mhm.
something that they never thought would happen, or anything like that. And I would be mortified because I would never want to call again.
Yeah.
It's a
No.
trust thing.
Mhm.
How would you trust to call someone again? And so I
Yeah.
think that's kind of something I have,
Mhm.
and it just goes, I mean, it's just part of the small town vibe. But
Mhm.
I was curious about your answer for if you dispatch like back where your hometown was, or family and anything like that, because I know I would struggle. And
Yeah.
I've unfortunately had terrible stories, and I've heard terrible things, and I've had a couple instances happen with people I know, but again, I'm not from this town. But you learn
Yeah.
people, and you have your
Mhm.
regulars, you have your people, the people that you regularly dispatch for, whether
Yeah.
it's medical or ambulance or whatever,
Mhm.
um, but I've heard some terrible stories, I mean, terrible things, especially like local, about happening to people, and so it's just something I don't think I could vibe with that very well.
Yeah, and and I think Iowa, and my experience with Iowa is your guys' families they're very like you guys all kind of stay in the same towns. Like
Hmm.
here in Cali and stuff, I think a lot of families, we get spread out, a lot. So the likelihood um, of me answering a call from my immediate family in an area like that I live in is less likely here, just because of the lifestyle, right? The lifestyle is just so different.
Yeah.
We end up getting so spread out. Not that it doesn't happen in Iowa, but in my experience, like meeting you guys and meeting all these different folks out there and keeping these relationships, is you guys stay pretty tight knit, local to where you're homegrown, not too far. So I think if I lived in Iowa and I lived that type of lifestyle where it was so close knit, like I could throw a rock and hit my dad's back porch, I think that would be a big struggle for me. That would be a huge struggle for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's going to be like that anywhere you go, I mean, I feel like, and it just depends on, what you do, I mean, dispatching is such a huge variety of stuff too. Like, I mean, you have some departments that just dispatch police. You have some dispatches that just do fire or just do medical, or just do phone calls, or do all of them, and that's the thing that's kind of cool is it's, not one department's the same, I mean, they're all doing things different. It's all done differently. It's all spoken differently, but at the end of the day, it's to help people. And I guess, to channel back to how we got here, from when I went to college, I knew I wanted to help people. I wanted to do the DHS route. I wanted to help families. I wanted to do this, wanted to do that, and obviously it didn't work out that path. But, transitioning to dispatching, I was helping people every single day, and, and to top that off, it is such a thankless job because, they don't know who you are. It's not like 911. This is Mackenzie. Well, make sure you thank me later. I'll drop my
Raspy
name
Dispatcher. Follow me on Instagram.
Let me know. Make sure you like me. Like to see how you're doing. Thanks. You're welcome. By the way,
tips are appreciated. 5-star ratings are suggested. No.
And I know a lot of places too. And I don't know how, like, in the bigger area, like for your outcome, there's also some people that never know how their call ended. And fortunate enough, we have the option. We're a small department, and I'm very close with all of my officers, and just to clarify how small, so in our council we have a police department and a sheriff's office, sheriff's department. So we have deputies and police officers. Okay. The deputies, it's normally one guy on. The PD always had 2 on. So, I mean, it's literally just 4 of us, I mean, and so daytime, I think the deputies would have the sheriff working, and then it would be 1 or 2, and they alternate shifts and stuff like that. PD always had 2 on at a time, and so you get to become a family. Obviously, you learn things about those guys that you probably know more than their family knows. I mean, what else are you going to talk about at 2:00 in the morning, when you're trying to stay awake or whatever. But, and, so you just kind of learn, and they'll normally, if you want to know how a call ended, you just ask them or you send them a message, or they more than likely will just come in after a call. And, it's actually kind of, and some departments don't get that. And I completely know that, but it's also kind of like, it's like a little debriefing, I mean, it's our personal debriefing, they'll come in and complain about the call I had to send them on and tell them how much they didn't like me doing that. And I'll say, well, it's my job. You're welcome.
It's my job.
Yeah.
I have to send you what you do with it. That is your business with you and your direct supervisor. When I'm asked, I did what I was supposed to do. For sure.
And, and I just wonder too, like how I would feel not knowing, like, I mean, on a regular basis, do you know most of the time how your calls end? Like, I guess kind of, I don't know.
I think, yeah. So that's one of the great benefits that I feel I've gained lateraling to the smaller agency. My bigger agency, we had so many hot calls, like so many shootings, so many, violent calls, that we didn't get a lot of closure. Because honestly, there was so much closure to be got, right? Like there's 5, 6, 7 calls that you're like, I wonder what happened on that. Where you just the numbers, you're outnumbered. So the really, really big stuff, At my first agency, they did a really good job at coming in and like letting us know what happened, but the likelihood
Who
of us,
would come in?
so usually the sergeant would come in,
Okay.
and sometimes the officer, depending, because we were so big. Our comm center was kind of its own thing, but the district that we worked in, those officers would kind of use our facilities, so they would come in and let us know. So, and there's always over the computer and stuff, but
Yeah.
that's not as personal.
Yeah.
But at this new agency, we get a lot more closure. I know my officers. At my first agency, I didn't know my officers outside of their identifier, and if they made me mad, So at this new agency, I've really enjoyed being able to connect with my officers, know my officers, and yeah, I get a lot more of that closure that I didn't always get. Now, my last agency was good if it was a call that you're like, look, I need to know what happened. It's really getting to me. They'll definitely, fill you in.
Yeah.
But routinely coming in like every call, we didn't have the bandwidth,
Yeah.
Compared to our smaller agencies.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess, and that's another thing too, there's some perks to small, there's some perks to big, and
Mhm.
you have such a wide variety of following, and so that's what's super nice about like I love watching your videos because, it's like you have so many different people, you have me who's from Podunk Town, Iowa, and then you have people that are from bigger cities or another small
Mhm.
town in a different state or something like that. Like, that's what's so cool is
Mhm.
we're everywhere, and that's what's
Yeah.
so cool. It's like, and bringing it back to like when I first started, like I didn't know anything, I didn't know anything about law enforcement. I didn't even know all these laws existed, and all this stuff was
What's that?
possible.
Rules.
I
What's
know,
that?
and it's just like, oh, you mean you can do that? Like I can do that? Like what? Like world's changed.
Yeah.
But and it's just different things like that. And you, on the flip side of being solo, it's also very difficult too because if you we're gonna get in kind of like the personal side, but if you have to go to the bathroom, just so you know, we didn't have
Yeah.
like headsets. We didn't have headsets for the longest time. So I was at my current dispatch station for I think 6 years. And I worked overnights the first like 3 or 4 years, and then I actually became the dispatch supervisor. So I became TAC, is what we call it. So it's terminal agency coordinator is the fancy word for it.
Ooh, I
So I
like
was in charge of all of our dispatchers and part timers. And
it.
so when I did that, I transitioned to days. Praise the Lord for day shift. I know I did my nights though. I tell you what, I did it.
I have to switch to days in a month, and I'm afraid I might like it. I'm scared. I like
Oh, you're
nights.
gonna like it. It's gonna be a whole new world. But and praise the nightlife. I loved it. I loved my nights. We learned
Yeah.
team no sleep on nights. That's what
Ayo.
I always say. But and so you transition over, but I tell you what, there was some nights when I'm like, is anyone gonna come and see me? Like, I gotta go to the bathroom. Like, I don't think I can turn the radio up loud enough, or like, I need to send these
Yeah.
guys in the squads like messages like, don't do anything stupid. I'll be back in 5 minutes.
Oh my
Or like
god.
something, because like sometimes like you'd be so busy and you don't have time and just different things like that. Or, if the jailer's busy, and they're not dispatch certified, but I mean they can answer a
Yeah.
phone and put them on hold or tell the guy on the radio, like stand by or whatever, and so
Yeah.
but you have to understand, with the jailers, they're always not a guarantee to sit for you. And so it's like some nights you'd be there twiddling your thumbs like, dude, are you gonna come and check on me? Like, I gotta go to the bathroom. Like, what do you mean? So,
But it's
and like it's
so
just
true. Yeah.
little
It's
things you don't think about, and
even with the two seat, like I'll be like,
yeah.
all right, you good? I'm gonna go to the bathroom, and then all of a sudden you hear Ashley. I'm like, I'm coming. Like,
Yep.
like
Yep.
the
Or
phones
you're in the
start blowing
bathroom
up.
and they're like screaming your name like someone died or something.
Yeah.
And you're just like, what's
This
going
is
on? They're like, well, they have a traffic stop. you couldn't have just answered, go ahead. Like, oh my gosh, like you about gave me a heart attack in the bathroom. Come on.
She's like, start fire, code 3, just
Oh
bring them in. They're
gosh.
cleared in.
Or I always had like someone that would sit for me and they're like, I'm like, do not push any buttons on this screen. And it never feels like, oh, you mean this one? I'm like, stop,
Oh
just
my
don't, just never
gosh.
mind. I don't have to go to the bathroom anymore. I was
Yeah,
just
you
kidding.
know what?
Just go
Yeah.
away. Oh, but yeah.
That's so
So I mean, yeah,
funny.
and it's just different things. And I guess another thing we could talk about is Zerker's sorry, programming software.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And entering stuff into the computer. We transitioned a lot. When I first started, we had old school Emergitech. I don't even know if you know what that is.
I have no idea what that is.
Yep, we had old school
That sounds like it
Emergitech.
might be a good thing that I don't know what that
It's very old, and then we did finally we use Zerker or Central Square. I don't know if you've heard of that either.
I haven't heard of those ones either, no.
So Zerker is what we use now for our CAD program and Zerker 911. So that's what we use.
Okay.
So Zerker, Central Square, I don't know if Central Square bought out Zerker, but anyways, it was a big update for us, but that's the thing too, learning new softwares and, I work part-time at the county below us. I do work part-time there. And so they had Shieldware. So that's another software, just different things like you learn like how to enter traffic stops, calls for service, different things like that, because that's another thing too. Like you think about it, like, so with our software program, it would transfer out to the squad's mobiles. So they're mobiles. So obviously they're laptops. So as soon as you start a call for service, it pings in their computer so they can just click it up and you start typing like the mad woman, like my little trainee, but
you are now the mad woman.
That's
you
right.
are
I am the mad woman. 100%. I'm probably I was that trainee that was like, just sit and watch me for a little bit. Oh, but just different things like that. And it's nice to have different technology, because otherwise it was like, sometimes I wouldn't even have to like give out a call right away because they would just look at what I'm typing, and then by the time I queue up their radio, they're like 10-4 direct en route. I'm like, cool. Guess you didn't want to hear me tell you what's going on.
You don't hear my voice. I've been practicing. I don't even mumble no
more. Time to think of how to say what I was gonna say.
Well, it's like so funny, like how different the job is, and like you said, talking about technology and whatnot. Because I've had to call, other states, for stuff that is happening to my citizen and my community, but they need this agency to go do this, and they're like, okay, we need you to send us like an admin message, and I'm like, why I gotta send an admin message? Like, I gotta go into the system to send you an document. Like, I'm on the phone, here's my badge number, but like it's because everyone's system is so different and everyone's CYA is so different, and it's just like it's just so crazy how we could all be doing the same thing, same goal, same task, and finding so many different ways to do it.
I do think it's sometimes fascinating though, like the state computer system, like it's still fascinating to me. Like I could probably look up your ORI and send you a teletype or an admin message and you would get it all the way from here. Like I just think that's so cool.
That is cool.
I don't know why I'm just thinking of this. Like,
but then
I'm gonna be like texting you like, hey, what's your ORI?
What's your ORI? But here's the other thing though, I'm also very upset about the boxes and how it's not free form. And I gotta like sometimes I gotta squish.
Sometimes you gotta fill that out.
Like gotta squish a warrant abstract. Like I gotta like cut paste. Like no, I gotta like hate it. I'm like why haven't we updated this? I don't know who's responsible for updating it. But if you're listening, please update it. I just want a free form box to be able to send. I just think there's some software guy that could just type in a little code and make that free form, but we haven't yet. So that'll be my next campaign.
That's right. When you change the world, you let them know that that's the first to go.
Legit. 100%. Legit. So you're not full-time anymore. You've hung your TAC hat up and you're per diem, which I figured out is a thing, going to my smaller agency. So
Yes.
you only work part-time or as you feel, as you need, as they need, because you have ventured
Yeah.
into a life after dispatch. And what have you got
Yes.
after dispatch?
Yep. So, so I actually left after I think it was 6 years of full time, and I actually went into the small business owning world. And it wasn't an easy decision, and I'll get into that because I'll ramble about this for a while. But I actually opened up my own nutrition club in my hometown. And so I do that full time. I have a business here in town, and so I actually run that. And so I decided to leave dispatching and to kind of pursue that. It was something I kind of got into. Um, it was my goal to eventually open it up. I had weight loss surgery actually, and
Mhm.
I will share that because I'm publicly sharing that. So I had that done. And then I ended up losing weight, and I found Herbalife Nutrition, and that's the company. And so I started using their products and had good results, and I just really liked it. And I knew some people in the business, and I saw how successful like their nutrition clubs were, and it was something that my community just didn't have. And I dragged my feet for years on doing it. I was just like, no, I'm fine. I'm a dispatcher. I like my job. I like what I do. Don't like the hours, but I like what I do, and I'm good at it. I don't really, I don't want to do that. No, I have good benefits. I have good retirement. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Um, Fast forward to during the whole weight loss process, I was going through some changes and everything like that. Focusing more on my health and different things like that, learning more things, which led me to learn more about the business side of what Herbalife could offer. So I ended up, I was originally going to end at the end of December. I was kind of just waiting for a couple things to pawn out, but I actually ended up just putting in like a month's notice to my boss. And I said, I have to do this. I have to branch out, and if I fail, I'm sure dispatchers will always be hiring. Cue the hiring staff alert.
We always,
Yep.
always
And
have a seat
so
available.
yeah, and so, and I, it was really hard for me, like really hard because, and I've touched base on this earlier, those guys were my family, they're not just friends, they're family. You work 12-hour shifts side by side with some of those people. I'm not out there in the cars with them, but they hear my voice and I hear their voice, and that forever will always be at your heart. I mean, even if you're in a bigger department and you don't see that person every single shift, who that is, and to
Mhm.
me that's always just a connection you'll never lose. And so it was really hard for me, and I remember, you know, telling my husband, um, am I going to do this? Like, am I really leaving a job security? Like, am I leaving this to go and do this, my business on my own? And it was probably one of the scariest things I'd ever did because, you know, you, you leave your family. I mean, yes, I'm still really close with a lot of my dispatchers and deputies and police officers and all of them, but it's not the same,
Mhm.
because you're not in the loop. You're not
Yeah.
in there every day. You don't know what's going on. I mean, but at a distance, and so
Mhm.
it was really hard for me. And to be honest, I emotionally and physically did struggle for a month or so. You have that guilt, you have that regret, and I think guilt was a huge thing for me, because I knew what I was doing to my other dispatchers. And if,
Mhm.
that's a real thing. Like, short staffed is a terrible thing. I worked
Mhm.
there for 6 years, and, we were full staffed maybe a couple times, and so,
Yeah.
and I was the trainer, so I would train people, and then they would leave, and it's just the way it was, I mean, and unfortunately that's the way it is now. You train someone and they don't stay, you don't get your 25 to lifers anymore. And I thought I was going to be one of them. So I guess I'm, speaking to myself, I mean, it just doesn't happen. Life changes. There's new opportunities, the world is ever evolving and there's tons of opportunities. And so I think, that's another thing, the emotional and physical aspect of it that people don't talk about.
Mhm.
It was hard, but fast forward after I got over my emotions and done that, we opened up a business, and so I left in October, and my nutrition club actually didn't open up until the following February. So I actually spent 3 months away from my home. I lived with my friends down in the Des Moines metro area, which is in southern Iowa. So keep in mind, I live in northern Iowa. So, and this was during winter time. So I would travel. I would travel back and forth, because, I left my job and I still needed to make money somehow. And so I actually went and I trained at a couple nutrition clubs in the southern Iowa area. And so I would do that. I would leave on Monday and come back Saturday, or even sometimes come back Sunday and leave again on Tuesday. And I did that for about, 2 to 3 months. And then, once we kind of, locked on a space and got everything up, we ended up opening up my business, Next Level Nutrition. Hey, go look me up on Instagram. And so we opened that up on February, and I just been kind of doing that full time, and it's just been busy, and it's been wonderful. And there's been ups and downs, and any small business owner out there knows what I'm talking about, and then you go through the inflation and everything that's been going on this summer, and everything that's cost has risen and stuff. But I also do part-time though still. So I'm actually part-time at my old dispatch center, in my hometown. And then I also do part-time at the county below us. So when I was still full-time, I actually started part-time down at the county just to the south of us. So I've been part-time there. I think I started there in like 2019. So I've been part-time at that department for 4 years or so. Like math is hard for me, so
yeah,
since 2019.
Don't worry about it. That's okay. We'll round up.
Yeah. And then, so obviously I still fill in shifts, here and there, and, when they need me, and, it's kind of nice, and, and different things like that. And so I kind of work part-time here and there. And it's just nice because, it'll always be in my heart. It's always going to be in my blood. It's always something that will be there. And so I'm really happy. Plus, I always told myself, hey, well, if I fail this business, I need to know what type
of who's hiring? I gotta have my foot at the door.
Right? No kidding.
But I know, obviously we're dispatchers, and Raspy dispatcher, and one of my big things is the world needs more dispatchers, and yes. But I think one of the other things that I really, and I have found the more people I talk to and chat with, is that dispatch is a great career if you want to be a lifer. That's totally amazing. It's there for you. It's a great family, foundation. But it's also great if you're using it as a stepping stone, and it's also great if you just take all the things, all the great traits, tools that you learn from this very unique job that you won't get anywhere else, and then you go chase another dream, and I think that's what you did and are doing, and you still are able to go part-time and, get your itch scratched with dispatch. But I think that we need to be okay and don't give power to the guilt that if this is no longer for us, for whatever reason, whether it's burnout, whether it's I have another calling that I want to go to, whatever it is, my life has just changed. It's okay to move on from it too, but it's such a great career. It's such a great job to get into it in the first place. But it's also okay for life to change. And I think there are dispatchers out there who, for a better lack of a word, are a little bitter. And, that affects people coming to their comm centers. It affects them personally. It affects their home life. And, we need to acknowledge when we're experiencing that burnout, when we're giving those bad vibes off, seek our peer support, seek services, or seek another calling. And that's it's not bad. Is that this doesn't make your heart sing anymore, and that's okay, and if something else is going to make your heart sing, like, go for it, but dispatching is such a great career, such a fun job, challenging job, in many different ways. but I think it also sets us up for whatever it is that's next. And
Oh
I
yeah.
think it certainly helped, probably, at least if bare minimum is gave you steady hands when making these
Hey.
decisions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we're just
Yeah.
gonna buckle down and we're gonna do it. And I think that is helpful in
Yeah.
anything that you do
100%. And
after
like
this.
and one of the questions like, that we had talked about is, what's changed? Like, have you changed? Like, has
Yeah.
dispatching changed you as a person? And I mean, 100%. Of course it has. And you know, there's good and bad changes. And just to get a little personal into my life, it's there's been good and bad changes in my life. I now don't trust anyone, and that's just comes with the job, and that also
Yeah.
comes from not necessarily being naive, but and I've always been a very street smart person, not book smart, hey, good for them. But, I was always like learn as
Math
I
is
go,
hard.
learn on the streets, math
Yeah.
is hard, it is hard, being, I tell you. But, I think it just comes, different people. Different people are going to take different things away from dispatching.
Yeah.
Good and bads for me. Goods, I mean, it's taught me so many more life skills, which only helps you. It helps you grow. It helps you realize there is more to life.
Mhm.
Um, and I could think of a couple more goods, and some bads. It's kind of affected me in different aspects of my life. And I've realized this in like my personal life. And just to touch base on that, if anyone else is ever struggling with that, it's made me a couple of things. It's made me very closed off.
Mhm.
It's made me very easy to recover, especially to some emotional stuff in my personal life.
Mhm.
It doesn't, and I think another big one for me, and these are just mine, I think another big one for me is it's definitely hindered my feelings, I guess I could say. So like, and to describe that more, it's like, not that I'm not empathetic or emotionless or anything, but I think one of the biggest things for like dispatching, and especially in like in any areas, you have to turn over so fast.
Yeah.
You can have one terrible call, and then, you might not even have time to comprehend what you just answered, and there might be another one with a completely different situation not even 2 minutes after you just dispatched it,
Yeah.
and so, um, I know that personally on my level has affected my personal life, and it's affected in relationships, it's affected in friendships, family, I mean, they look at you and they're like, how did you get over that so fast? Just like, I
Mhm.
just you just do, and that's what we're trained to do. We're trained, and you get it such embedded in you, and they're not necessarily bad things, but I have moments in my life where I sit here and I think, I was trained to do that. I'm trained
Yeah.
to just get over that. I'm trained to just move forward, and I think that's something, that I struggled with a lot. Not being able to have feelings, I guess, and that's just a personal aspect of it. But it's just something, you just move on, because if I would sit there and feel after every call, and sometimes you don't have time to, sometimes you do
Yeah.
have to get on and move on,
Mhm.
and that's why I don't think I could ever do it in a place where I know people, because then I'd be a freaking mess. I'd be like, oh my
Yeah.
God, but I mean, changed for the bad, I guess. It's not really bad, but definitely changed, and I says there's always good and bad, and I can, good. I mean, it's always good to have law enforcement on your side.
Yeah.
So
This
I
is
mean,
that.
that's
Yeah.
always a good thing. But
Mm.
and I really wanted to touch base on like the changing of like those kind of things. Those are just some things that like I've noticed like throughout, my dispatching career, and lead me to like, having getting married and eventually starting a family. You look at things differently, I
Yeah.
mean, and not that I lived a sheltered life, but there's, pardon my language, there's a lot of shitty people out there,
Yeah.
and we deal with those
Mhm.
shitty people. It's life,
Mhm.
and sometimes we have to play nice to those people, and and that can mess with a person, I mean, you might have to talk to someone on the phone that you know is a terrible human, but you have
Mm,
to talk to them until someone can get there for them. You know, it just
yeah.
it's part of the job. And but with that being said, I have my outlets. I have my two dogs. I like to go on walks. I like to listen to music. There's different things like that. And that's something that's really helped me, and having a family in your workplace really helps too. And so I think those are some of the helpful things that helped me with my dad,
Mhm.
that I was mentioning and stuff.
Yeah, for sure. No, I definitely think there's challenges in every career. There's what that's the reality of this job is that we do have hard emotional tolls
Yeah.
that are bestowed upon us multiple times throughout a shift. That is a reality if you are in this line of work or if you're considering getting into this line of work. That you may have to decide if it works for you or not, if it's something you're willing to take on. Um, but you do learn from each other. You do have people to lean on. Hopefully, the agency that you're working for does have peer support and counseling and those things set up, debriefings, avenues to get closure for big calls that, and not even for big calls, but for calls that affect you personally, I should
Yep.
say, because everyone's calls affect everyone differently, right? So,
Yeah.
I think it all comes together, and I think the best way to put a bow on our lovely interview is what advice would you give someone who's considering getting into this career?
Try it. I mean, you won't know until you try it. Honestly, I mean,
Big
and
facts.
don't be intimidated,
Mm,
and I'd love to sit here and say it gets easier, but with the way the world is, sometimes it doesn't get easier, but it's rewarding. Um,
mhm.
there's always a good to a bad. So, there's always the light at the end of the tunnel. And so it's so different. And I know I said it's rewarding, and it is. There's always a positive to a negative, there's a good to a bad. I know I just said that. But I guess my advice is you won't know until you try it. And if you're
Mhm.
considering it, you know, even if you don't want to apply, ask them if you can do a ride along, ask them if you can come and sit in their council, just go and see, talk to them. There's tons of like dispatcher support groups you can browse on Facebook, see what people talk about. I mean, I would just say, it's worth a shot. You're worth a shot. I mean, it's just a family.
Yeah.
Even though I'm not full time anymore, those people are still my family. Ashley's my family, and I've never even worked with her.
Mhm.
People that I know that work in the other parts of Iowa that I've met, at trainings or schools or anything. I'm still friends. I'm still good friends with the girl I went to dispatch training school at, and that was back in 2016. And she was
Yeah.
from southeastern Iowa, and not that we're like personal friends, but just dispatch friends, because it's just
Mhm.
you have an understanding. So I would just say, my advice is don't give up. You're gonna have bad days, you're gonna have bad calls, you're gonna mess up, because I
Mm.
guarantee you will. That's not
True.
even something I want to get into because oh Lord.
It's a
But
recorded
just
line.
know it's gonna be okay,
Yeah.
and there's always an answer, most of the time, I guess, and there's always someone to help you, and I
Yeah.
guess that's what I like too. You're never truly alone. You might be alone, you might feel alone, but there's always either someone you can call, there's always someone you can ask for help, and that's what I loved about this is, you know, you never felt like you didn't belong, you know.
Mhm.
Um, it just kind of depends, So I guess that's kind of my advice, 2 cents, just
No, it's perfect.
I
Yeah, it's
yeah,
great. I think sit-alongs, and I think the way you said it was you don't even have to apply. You can
yeah,
ask for a sit-along and
no,
see if it's something you wanna get interested in, and then you could
yeah,
apply. Like, sit-alongs are
yep,
great. They're a great
yep,
way to experience it without having to do the footwork if you're not interested in
mhm,
it, you know?
yeah.
Um, how do people get into your business, order, thrive? I've tried the shakes that you guys make with Herbalife. They are delicious.
Yes.
If people are interested in kind of going about that, seeing what those nutrition supplements and things are,
Yeah.
how can they find that?
Yep. So I have an Instagram page and a Facebook page, so I can drop those links to Ash as well. And I also have a website that you can go and you can kind of browse the products and look through stuff, and you can actually order it right there, and it ships it right to your house. So you can do it one of two ways. You can join our Facebook or Instagram, and then I do have like a website you can go to as well to kind of browse through the products and kind of read about different things and stuff like that. I will give you a heads up, if you join my Facebook or Instagram, be very prepared for my lives. I do Facebook Live every so often, and they are quite the show. I tell you what.
I'd be jumping on there.
Yeah,
I'd be there at 6 a.m. like, hey, I'm here from California.
Ash is like, I'm going to bed. You're too crazy for me. But yeah, no, I just but yeah, no, it's a website I have. I don't know it like memorized, but it's kind of like a long branded thing. But no, definitely I can drop that for Ash to post or whatever.
For sure.
But yeah. So
yeah. So I'll put all the links in the bio for anyone who's interested. And of course, reach out to Mackenzie on Instagram, DM. As you can tell, she's talkative and willing to help anybody who's interested in, health, dispatching, all the good stuff. One of my really good friends. I vouch for her. So thank you so much for joining me today, Mackenzie.
Yes.
And I'm going to politely kick you out, and I'll be right back with you, okay?
Bye, Ash.
Bye. All right. Thank you guys so much for joining me here on another show. Let's Talk Dispatch. I'm super excited about all the interest I've been getting with folks coming on, all the appointments you guys have been scheduling. So if you are interested in joining me for a chat, current, former dispatch, if you have a company that worked with and for first responders, I'm interested in talking to you. So go to theraspydispatcher.com. Feel free to sign up for any time slot that works for you. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on Instagram. Like us on Facebook. All that good stuff. Until next time, stay raspy, everybody.